So I want to thank all of you for coming to this online Zoom session on end-of-life planning. For those of you who don't know me, I am Stephen Lee. I'm the canon vicar here, you might say, at the cathedral. One of my many responsibilities is leading the Pastoral Care department, represented today by Samantha Hall, and our Columbarium team, represented by Wendell and Adrian. Um, and so we'll open with prayer, and then I'm just going to hand it off to my colleagues to lead us through this session. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Almighty and eternal God, you who hold all our days in your hands, grant us now your peace as we gather to reflect upon the mystery of life and death. In this world, we encounter death in its many forms and its inescapable shadow, and we confess that it unsettles us. In our frailty and fear, in our love and our grief, help us to see beyond the veil, trusting in your promise of eternal life. Let your Spirit dwell among us, guiding our thoughts, so that we may learn not only to prepare for death, but also to live in the fullness of life that you offer us. And in all things, grant us the courage to live as people of resurrection hope, trusting that nothing in life or death will ever separate us from your love, which is ours through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. So I'll hand it off to Adrian and Wendell.
Thank you, Stephen. So my name is Adrian Laws. I've been with the cathedral since 1990. I've worked in several capacities here, a long time in the HR office, where I had a lot of experience with the life cycle of employees and a lot of births and deaths and changes that our employees encountered over the course of my time in that role. And then for about the last 7 years, I've been working in the Columbarium office. I am a cradle Episcopalian. I'm a mother. I'm a caregiver for an aging parent. I'm the daughter of a recently deceased father. I'm also a certified end-of-life doula. I've been an executor for someone's will. And in my time working in the HR office, I had a couple of really frustrating and heartbreaking experiences where employees died and we didn't have any way to contact their families. And so all of those experiences have really urged me to become what we call a death educator and to encourage people to do end-of-life planning. It's really important for a lot of reasons. I think it gives us peace of mind as individuals. It certainly is a gift to anybody who's left behind after we die, to understand what matters to us, what we would like them to do for us, and it's a path for people to follow when there's a lot of emotion after a death. My father died this summer, and he and I had a lot of opportunity to have conversations about his wishes. He left some good information about what he wanted for his funeral, and we had time to have hard conversations. And for me personally, that made experiencing his death a little bit easier, to really feel like we were able to have some of those difficult conversations together. In the time when I served as an executor, I felt like there had been a gift given to me in the understanding of what my person's wishes were. And then I could reciprocate by following my person's wishes and giving them that final gift of completing their last wishes for their life, their remains, their property. So that's some of the why. When we look at planning a workshop or having a conversation, we think about all those W questions. So we're going to kind of work through those. We started with the why. We're going to talk about the what, the who, the how, the where, and the when, and hopefully some of that will be useful or make some sense to you. So when we are working with our columbarium clients, we ask everyone to appoint an agent. And when we communicate about that, we say, that as much as we can, we'll follow our individual's wishes, but there may come a point when the individual, me, Wendell, any of you cannot communicate directly about our own wishes. So we think about appointing an agent who's somebody who we trust to carry out our wishes, who we've been able to communicate with, and who can act in our stead if we're unable to communicate, either because of illness or because we've died. And I think one of the most important things that I've learned in my experience is that even though there's a lot of fear around death, it doesn't mean we're not thinking about it. So if we can have some of these conversations, make some of these decisions, it can clear some space for us to do some better living and not be caught up in a loop of fear because we're not completing that cycle. So we're hoping that we can work through some of that stuff together today and help you make whatever progress you're looking to make. I'm going to keep looking at my notes. So we start with some of these really important sort of basic documents. And I think if you only come away making these sort of first two documents, these decisions, and then documenting them through a healthcare proxy, which is also sometimes called a living will, and a power of attorney, then you have given your authority to somebody to make healthcare decisions for you with the healthcare proxy. And then you have given someone the authority to take care of your legal and financial affairs with the power of attorney. We're going to send links to you for both of these forms. For New York State, if you're in another state, you may have to research what the options are in the state that you're in. Then the next thing we have here is to decide what you want to happen with your body after you die. Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to have a green burial? Do you want to be buried in a traditional cemetery? There are all different kinds of alternative methods of dispensing with a body. And so it's good to think about those things, make a decision today. If you change your mind, you can document and communicate your next decision, but making some of those decisions now, I speak from experience when I say it's really helpful to know what your wishes are, and then to think about what your final resting place is going to be. Is that going to be in a cemetery? Is it going to be in a place like the columbarium here at the cathedral, or do you want to have your cremated remains scattered or something else? So thinking about those things is important. And then creating a will. Your will is your way of communicating what you want to happen with your belongings, with any property that you may have, any donations that you'd like to make to organizations or individuals that matter to you. And then one of the resources that I was using to sort of help organize some of my thoughts. I have this terrific game. So I think I mentioned, let's see, I'm all blurred. So I mentioned that I am an end-of-life doula. So one of the resources that I have is this great game called Start with Hello. It's a conversation game, and it has a little booklet of questions, and you can get together with one friend or family member or multiples and go through some of these questions. But one of the really great questions that I was refreshed on here was, in thinking about a will and your belongings, to think about if there's anybody that you haven't talked to for a long time that you would want to speak to before you die. Maybe that's something else to put on this key decisions list. So those are some of our sort of initial most important decisions, and then I'm going to pass it off to Wendell, and he's got sort of the next phase.
Hi, everybody. My name is Wendell. I've been connected to the cathedral for just about 2 years now, and I've spent much of that time with the columbarium, and I have been very grateful to learn the lessons associated with such a space. So, to round out some of these options that Adrian has been talking about with the healthcare proxy and the power of attorney, another really useful form to know about is the POLST, or Physician Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment, or just called a POLST for short. It also can go by different names in different states, so that's another thing to look up depending on where you are. Here it is called the POLST in New York. It is both a process and a form for um, basically making a plan for healthcare providers in a time of emergency. It is a way to use your wishes to create practical medical orders that can be relied upon in times of emergency. The POLST form is specifically for people who have advanced medical conditions, a serious diagnosis, um, or are seriously ill or frail for any reason, um, anyone who may be expecting or at risk of any kind of serious medical emergency. Um, the advantages of this form, of the POLST process and form, are specificity um, and a direct path to the care that you know you need based on your best medical advice. So you can, uh, it covers things like in an emergency, am I to be taken to a hospital or to stay where I am? What sort of treatments are allowed? What sort of treatments am I not willing to receive? Um, what you can lay out a general care plan for some scenarios that you might be in. Um, and all of this is much more specific than something like a do not resuscitate, a DNR, in the amount of detailed provisions you're able to make. So the one other thing about the POLST is that they it is not until you are at the time of meeting those conditions of serious medical need, and the POLST organization themselves say that if you're healthy, it's best to wait, be aware of the POLST form and process, and then get into that at the closer to the time of need. So additionally, there's a lot to consider with financial arrangements and where how do you arrange for your financial affairs to be easily taken care of, handed off to those in the future, and to ensure continuity of contact and access. So there are really just a lot of things to name that we can cover as part of this process. This is about gathering the documents and communicating the information or ensuring that communication will be possible. So some things that you'll want to consider, a lot of this will be familiar, is your all banking accounts, any insurance you have, including less common types of insurance, um, income sources, assets, and investments with contacts, the any state tax documents, government documents indicating earnings, um, mortgages, liabilities and debts, vehicles, things like this. Because they're so different from person to person, the ways that you use and manage your money and the types of things that it has been invested into, it can be so beneficial to make someone a clear path, whether it's a master document, a detailed conversation, or other kind of message, where they can find all the info and just know quickly what was important in your financial life, um, who can I get in touch with if I have questions about any ongoing processes.
I think that can look too like it can. One thing that I intended to say before, as we're making these decisions, to just even putting them all in one place, if that's all you can do as a starting point, that's incredibly valuable. if that's just getting a folder, or if you have them digitally, you can create a folder on your computer as long as somebody can access those. You put everything in one drawer, that's makes things so much easier. But but you're the one who knows what your assets are, what your particular considerations are. So just putting them in one place is a really, really important step.
Mhm. It is also a good time to think about what you would be interested in for your funeral and memorial if you have not before. A funeral, memorial, celebration of life can be so personal, so variable, and communicating about where you would like to have it, what sort of venue or a particular cherished place um, can be very useful in planning. Going ahead and gathering info from about and from that organization, if it's a religious institution or a whatever it may be, a wildlife preserve. Finding out all the information you can as soon as possible about what it would be like to host a gathering in that space would leave you most prepared to share that information with whomever it would be useful, or leave 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 a path towards arranging the service. The um, Additionally, with a lot of arrangements, you'll have much flexibility over your choices of art, text, and reading and music. And beyond just being a special thing to tell someone about, it would be very valuable to potentially clear them of the clear someone of the decision of what was their favorite piece of music to play or something like that. Additionally, consider who you would like to come, if there's anyone you would not like to come, um, and how they will be able to get there. So that's a very open-ended area, but as much as you can do in advance will pay off greatly. Otherwise, something that we often leave behind are traces of our digital life, including many, many accounts created over many, many services, used to varying degrees, with various expectations of privacy. So that's just one more area where gathering information and communicating how you'd like it to be used would be helpful. Many platforms, especially for major social media services, have a legacy contact or legacy profile feature, which might let you access a profile of someone who is deceased and post a message. This can be used to share information about memorial services. That is typically most useful, or life status updates.
Well, and it's another instance where you're appointing an agent to act on your behalf after your death. So, with Facebook, for example, they have a legacy, this legacy contact option, and then if you elect someone, give someone the authority with that, they can either maintain your account as a legacy account, or they can delete the account if that's what you want them to do. But the choice here is about you have to tell them who your agent is for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Additionally, you may have on your devices, across multiple devices, or multiple locations where you keep phones, tablets, computers, different passwords, different spread of contacts and information. One thing is that sometimes people may not realize that they are the only holder of a particular contact in their family, someone who maybe is less looped in or lives far away. It can be meaningful to make sure that access to contact information that you alone have is not lost.
So it's another thing, I think, that we're talking, all of these things that we're talking about, to, if you have all of your passwords in one place, or I still have very effective but old Rolodex, which I love, all my passwords on my Rolodex. I had a good friend who had all of her passwords on one piece of paper clipped to a clipboard, so the people in the house could find those passwords, and have access. So whatever method you use, putting them in one place, however you like to do that, is something that can be really, really helpful.
Mhm.
After somebody dies. And so then our next thought, so we're working through, we've talked about why and what, and now we're on the who. So, this is, I mean, we're all sort of thinking about who needs to know about these decisions that you're making. And it may be that different people need to know about different parts of the decisions. But if you have made a will and you're leaving everything to somebody, and somebody else is going to have feelings about that, you might you might be in a position of sparing your beneficiary by talking about that other party, or at least leave a letter to explain why you made the decision you made. That's a particular case, but generally you want to think about informing family and friends about your decisions. The more people who know what your wishes are, the better the chances that they'll be able to carry them out. If you have an attorney, if you have any particular banking relationships, you may want to file a power of attorney, or something like that with your lawyer and your bank. A lot of these medical forms that we talked about earlier, the healthcare proxy and the POLST or the MOLST, those are forms that your doctor and potentially your hospital, if there's a hospital that you frequent, they should have that on file. Again, it's ensures a better likelihood that your wishes are going to be followed, the more people who are aware of the decisions that you've made. And they can collectively, contribute to carrying those out. Some of these forms, a lot of the legal forms need to be witnessed, and that's an important feature to think about. So you want to think about who's a neutral party, somebody who's not named in the document, somebody who is not going to necessarily be a beneficiary, but who is above the age of 18, who can sign the document and say that they witnessed you making this decision, your signature and the date, and that you entered into that, whatever that decision is, without being under duress. So think about who can witness your documents. Some people have witnessing parties. They'll prepare all the documents up to the signature and the date, and then get together and witness for one another. And that can be a really, really valuable thing that friends or neighbors can organize. And we also have been talking about having a witnessing gathering here at the cathedral. So if you get to the point where you have your documents all the way, but you just need someone to witness your signature, then we'll set up an opportunity for you to come, and we can provide some witness. The witness is not a vested party, so you're not giving anything away. It's just somebody who's affirming that you in fact did make these decisions. And I think and then I guess another thing about copies, right? So we talked about if you can only do all of these, create all these documents, make all these decisions, and keep them in that folder or drawer in your own home, that's better than nothing. Some people will create documents and put them in the freezer because they're secure there in the freezer. They're easy to find. Some people will put them in a binder and put them on a bookshelf. But if there are people who need to know about your decisions and you have the opportunity to make copies, and distribute them, you should think about who it is who is going to need those copies. And now I think we thought this is sort of a lot of information coming at you, and hopefully some of it is familiar. But we thought we'd just take a little bit of a brain break and ask if anybody wants to put any questions in the chat. You can type your questions into the chat. You can follow up with us by email afterwards. We will be sending a lot of, we'll be sending our presentation and a lot of the information and links that we have. But we thought we'd just take a little moment to catch our breath and read a sweet little poem together, and then we'll continue on in a moment.
I will go ahead and read the poem, and then we'll just have the we'll rejoin in about a minute or two. Winter Trees by William Carlos Williams. All the complicated details of the attiring and the disattiring are completed. A liquid moon moves gently among the long branches. Thus, having prepared their buds against a sure winter, the wise trees stand sleeping in the cold. Okay. Brief interval. Okay. We'll go ahead now with navigating tough conversations.
So earlier I referred to resistance that a lot of us have, fear that we may have about having some of these conversations. And that makes a lot of sense. But I think, like I said, also, I think we're fooling ourselves if we think that we're not thinking about this stuff, and maybe it's difficult to start talking about. But we like to follow this guiding principle of 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you talk. So when you're having conversation, you can open the conversation, gauge the response of the person that you're meeting with, and then find out what they need to know from you. And you can take the conversation in stages. You can come back to it at another time. But listening to one another, I think, is really the most important concept when we're having conversations about some of these hard things. It's hard to imagine not being able to be together after a death. But again, being able to sort of clear space in our minds by having these conversations gives us more space for living while we have the opportunity to do that. So we encourage you to use language that's as clear and compassionate as you can. There's a really important concept of mirroring or repeating back. Once you've said something that's difficult, or you've heard something that's difficult, you can say, "This is what I heard you say. Did I get that right? Is this what you meant to say?" And by putting it in your own words or giving the person an opportunity to process and maybe refine or maybe change, maybe you didn't hear it the right way, so you have another opportunity to communicate the decision, or maybe it's a question and you need to explore it together. But listening is sort of the core concept of a lot of these conversations. It's okay to start and stop. It's okay to change your mind and come back. And to remember that it's a process. It's a process that doesn't have to happen all at one time. So to that end, we have some, I think I mentioned some of these earlier, but some of these resources that are really great. These are some online resources. The Conversation Project has a lot of different prompts for having different kinds of conversations. It gives you a guide to think about your own answers before you have a conversation, and then some of these other resources give you an opportunity to think about what matters to you, what your feelings are. Willow End of Life has a great resource for developing what they call a heart will or an ethical will. Maybe you don't have a lot of possessions to leave behind, but maybe what you have is, I mean, we all have our lives, what has been valuable to us, the accomplishments that we've had over the course of our life. And that's an enormous part of the legacy that we leave. And so they have a resource that helps guide you through some of those thoughts. Maybe it's dredging up some old memories and figuring out ways to tell stories about the important parts of your life. So we're going to share some of these resources with you afterwards. I think this didn't make it onto our slide, but the National Institute on Aging also has some great resources for exploring some of these issues. And again, to remember that that making a start is what is really important. Each time you complete any of these steps, are a lot of terrific rewards. Just in getting those decisions made, letting people know, and giving yourself and your loved ones peace of mind. And there's so much value in going through that process.
Mm-hmm. And having had some of these conversations, having previously made some of these decisions, documents, arrangements, whether no matter what you have already taken care of or what still lies ahead, it can be really useful to have an understanding with yourself of at which points you will make and revisit these decisions. It's often useful to check in about your end-of-life preparations around major life events, especially changes of relationship status, marriage and divorce, financial, employment, health status changes, new births and deaths in your family and among your close people, can all be good to check in for who is, that might involve such a wide variety of things, like who is assigned as a beneficiary to a certain account, who is the key contact for a document that you have in place. So for practically updating that information can be useful. And then additionally, the values component of it can shift, and you may want different provisions and allocations and have a different vision for your remains, for example, after a while after you consider these plans for the first time. So think about what milestones you could use. It can be useful to think of ages 40 and 80, or you could come up with a particular timeline from the age that you are now, and have that promise with yourself that you will revisit these items and search for what else may be included at that point. So that is the last main consideration to make. The taking us through the who, what, how, and when, and why. We are considering the date of October 30th in about a month for a follow-up session to that could be a time where we witness documents like Adrian was mentioning, have any questions to circle back around to items that were introduced today or that were not introduced today that you have additionally been considering and working on. So we will be in touch with the same method over email about when that will be, and would love to hear what you would like to have expanded on further at that point, and your interest in witnessing documents. So we will move after these notes to a Q&A, and we can look at any chat questions and hear questions as well. Before that, we have just a few other things to mention. On Monday, November 4th, will be our observance of All Souls Day this year. We'll be in the Columbarium that afternoon from 2 to 4:30, and we'd love for you to stop by and light a candle, participate in quiet, reflective observance of the day in which we're reminded of our people in the columbarium so warmly. That will be that afternoon, and it's just a drop in, drop out.
And that's to remember those whose remains are in the columbarium and everyone. It's every soul, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Truly. And then we will be having our annual Blue Christmas program in mid-December this year. That is time to honor the complexity of the holiday season and the feelings that come with it when you are mixing a time of joy and celebration with memories and grief and how all that comes together. That will be announced shortly for December. So you can look forward to hopefully joining us for those upcoming programs. And now we will move towards a Q&A session with a food for thought quote to start us off. We are all just walking each other home, which is a writing from Ram Dass and Mirabai Bush.
I want to give a quick shout out to Andrea for making this important note in the chat. She said for social media accounts, it can also be useful to ask a designated person to remove sensitive information, just posts, direct messages, comments that the individual may not want to have remain online in perpetuity after they are gone. This requires the person to have legal access to the account. So thank you, Andrea, for shouting that out in the chat. I do want to also just reaffirm for everyone that we will be emailing the links to the resources in a follow-up email after today's session. And also we have a question from Martha Meg. She asks if the POLST has been accepted as enforceable by New York courts.
It is a legal document. I can't. I'm not an attorney. I can't speak officially, but it is a legal document that's coming from the State Department of Health. So I would my not legal authority says that yes, that it is considered to be upheld by the court system.
Linda asks, is there any advice on finding an executor when there's no family or younger friends available?
It's something to consider. I have been at some meetings where that has come up. It's probably something that we want to think about and come back to with. I don't know if I have an answer. Certainly you would want to have somebody who has some kind of vetted authority to carry out wishes. I know there are state appointed guardians for things. It's probably something that we want to come back to, but certainly I'll do a little bit of research and figure out what we can suggest for that.
Okay, I don't see any other questions in the chat. If you have a question and you didn't have a moment to type it out, if you want to raise your hand, I could also unmute you so that you could ask the question in real time. Cynthia asks if the remains of two people can be interred in one chamber of the columbarium.
They cannot. We're not allowed to commingle remains.
I'm gonna unmute Gina. She has that question, and then we'll come back to you, Marcia.
Thank you for this. I just tried to tackle exactly this 2 weeks ago, and I was stalled, and I didn't expect this. The lawyer that I had chosen, and she was local, outlined a process that was almost entirely virtual on Zoom. And as someone who's 60, that actually stopped me in my tracks because I expected more of someone I would meet, someone whose hands I would shake, someone who I would get a feeling for and would have a relationship with, and who could then be someone I could turn to as adjustments needed to be made. And so I'm coming here to you to say, is this largely now a virtual process in some cases as a result of COVID? Or can one still expect to find people who will do this important process in a way that's more person to person?
You're talking about which part of the process is it that I think probably there are a lot of different sort of components to what we've been talking about, right? So I think, if you're to the point where you're talking about a MOLST or the MOLST or the POST form, that's a conversation that you're going to have with your doctor. So likely that's happening in person after there's been, a health change or some kind of diagnosis. I think, a lot of the stages do happen virtually, as you're sort of trading information, boilerplate stuff. And then when you get to the specifics, the particulars, I'm thinking about now with a will, there might be some back and forth virtually, but then I think you don't have to have an attorney to sign a will in New York State. You can do that on your own, following some guidelines. But if you have any complexity with your will, and I think you do want to have an attorney do that. And then I think generally you would end up going at least for one visit in person, to sign the will, in the presence of your attorney, and then they might keep copies of your will as well as you having them at home.
Okay.
I think it sort of happens all different ways. I think it's just like other kinds of remote options at this point, remote options in the workplace. I think it's a hybrid. I guess I think if that's something that matters to you, maybe you keep looking until you find somebody who can give you the experience that you need.
That's what I'm doing because I felt it was a lawyer and it was to take care of all of the documents. And the fact that I'd never met them was actually incredibly important to me. But I'm also feeling very old and very old school as I articulate that need.
Well, hopefully, some of what we've talked about, and if we can provide any, we're not attorneys, we don't have that kind of expertise to bring to you, but we certainly can at least have we can do some listening, we can have some conversations, and maybe we can help a little bit with the process, or at least sort of cheer you on while you're doing that.
Marcia asked, what about the cost of funerals here at the cathedral?
That's actually, Samantha, that's like the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
Which might be more of interest to a bigger group. And that is, I've done a trust, I'm doing all the things to make it as easy as possible for my nephew, who is going to be the executor, and he has a power of attorney until I die, all that stuff. But I don't know how much money I actually have to have in my bank account so that he can take care of everything he has to take care of without dipping into his own funds. And so I have to, price out everything. Is it 10,000 here, 5,000, all that kind of stuff. And one of them is, of course, to find out the details of the cost of the cathedral. I have everything's written out, have a place in the columbarium, but I don't know what that actual funeral is going to cost.
So I think, it's very simple. We have one number. Samantha has the number. She'll share it right now, with the exception that if it's like a state funeral, so like hundreds of people, orchestra, the full works, that's not that number. So what is the number, Samantha? It's like
the number 55. Is 500 right now.
What is it?
5,500.
Okay. And does that include the music? If I want to have lots of, I want to have a choir and all that kind of stuff. No, that's extra.
So that includes the organist, and then I think one other instrumentalist. I should probably stop talking because I'm
Okay. Okay. It's
No,
enough.
no. Well,
I'll come and meet with you, Samantha. But it is an issue as we're doing all this planning. And that's what's actually getting me emotionally right now. It has to do with all the stuff in your life and all the stuff that somebody else is going to have to take care of. How can you make that easy for them? And I imagine, I pretend I'm him and I come in and what do I do with this and what do I do with that and who do I contact about the stuff? And it's mostly crap, but it's my crap and I love it. So it's actually very difficult. That's all.
So just 5,500. It comes with the music, an organist, and then either a soloist or an instrumentalist. I mean, I think if there are additional things like live streaming, or again, if it's a really big funeral, or if there's additional music beyond that, there are additional costs. But for most people, I would say, and I'm only looking at Samantha because she handles all these details. But my understanding is for most people, it's just like that one price fit does everything you need. So you don't have to worry about all the a la carte stuff. It's a very simple, in that way, process. Samantha, is that correct?
I think, yeah, that is correct. And I think also what I will also do is send out the brochure, the PDF that we send for people when they're asking inquiries about the funeral and the memorial service. Because what it will do is it shows you like if you want to choose your music, you can choose your music, right? There are little things that you can choose in advance that would help whoever is helping to build the bulletin. You can choose those things in advance, and that way, essentially, you can like pre-write the bulletin if you wanted to, and they would only be responsible for like the obituary, like other like things that like won't happen until until you are actually at the end. Um, I think that's the best way I can answer that question. I know earlier you had asked like what is it like the number amount you need to have in your account. Unfortunately, there is not an answer that I think any of us are prepared to give you about specifically like the holistic costs of what happens when you pass. But I think that you can guesstimate to the best of your ability by just trying to collect as much information as you can and then like round up a little bit.
You can, with a lot of funeral homes, you can prepay, cremation costs, or there are definitely arrangements that I think probably every funeral home would be able to make with you, so that you can prepay those, so those are not, mysterious or changeable. You can do that, and they'll hold those funds in escrow, and then take care of things when it's the time. And in terms of other stuff, I mean, I think it's great to be thinking about your stuff and whatever you can be doing to lighten the load for people, for your nephew in your case, Marcia, to be, appreciate your stuff. I mean, if it's stuff that you want around you, you do what you can, but just lightening the load is a lot of what we're talking about, right? So lightening the psychic load, lightening the emotional load, like lightening the physical load. Anything that you're able to do is going to be valuable, I think, after your death. And then, I mean, at the end, some there are services like just home clearing services, estate clearing services that can come in and just bundle and clear anything that that you haven't made provisions for.
I think I know the price range for the columbarium niches, but this is all information that we can definitely forward to you when we send you the links for the resources, when we send you the funeral brochure. We'll send all that information after today's session. But if Adrian or Wendell wants to answer the specific question of like how much a niche costs, I'm gonna leave that one to you guys.
Yeah, so the niches that we currently have available here are in the limestone section. If you've been into the columbarium recently, that's the freestanding middle wall of the room. That's the lighter textured gray colored limestone. And those niches have all the same functionality and are flexible in the amount of people who can be interred. And basically, one niche or one person is the unit of pricing. And that ranges from the highest base price of $7,000 to $4,000 down to $4,500, based solely on location on the wall, with eye level being sort of the highest base price and outward going down through the pricing tiers.
Wendell, can you circle back to the POLST question?
Yes, we had a question about what is an MOLST, and in my understanding, that is a variant name for the same plan, the same concept. Different providers and states will use different terms, but MOLST and POLST are the most common names that you'll see it referred to. And there's not a functional difference with the P or the M.
The M is medical and the P is physician. So it's really the same. It's really the same form, but I think in different states it's referred to under one name or the other. So it's a medical order or a physician's order. That's the difference between the two.
And both of them are like legally like they're in New York State specifically. They both are recognized as legal documents.
Right. In New York State, I think we have the POLST, but there will be a variation, state by state, that would, might have that variation. And that's a place where you would give instructions about resuscitation, about whether you wanted to be on a ventilator, whether you wanted to be kept on a feeding tube, any of those sort of more advanced life-sustaining measures. And a lot of the consideration there is sort of what your quality of life would be. Would you like to be kept alive? When you're no longer able to perform other functions or enjoy the things that matter to you. Just think about what being alive means to you. Would you like to be still breathing but not being able to communicate with people? Would you prefer to be on pain medication but you wouldn't be able to communicate with people? So thinking about kind of some of those eventualities. And again, the POLST and the MOLST are things that come into play once there is a diagnosis, when you have some awareness of the trajectory of your diagnosis and the kinds of things that are likely to happen based on that. Anything else we have in our chat, Samantha?
I was just getting ready to say there's nothing else in the chat, and if everybody is satisfied at this point, I think that we can go ahead and close it out.
I thought I saw a hand. Did we miss anyone?
No, I don't see any more hands.
Oh, okay.
Muriel is raising her hand.
Oh, she's physically raising her hand. Okay.
Yeah, because we can't do it on this for some reason.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so go ahead.
Muriel, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself? There we go.
I just want to share what I've learned from the process in putting all this together. One thing is about getting a signature for power of attorney. Some people, I've asked, I have a lawyer who has put all the papers together and everything, but when I sent it to my net, she wants 2 power of attorneys, and they're in Canada. Well, I sent the forms, and they're to be notarized, but niece and nephew tried to get their notarized. They said, well, have you read the documents that you're signing? And they would not, they want you to have read everything that's in the power of attorney. So it's not like having a signing party. And the other thing is the lawyer comes to my home and talks to me at my dining room table, which I like a lot.
That's excellent.
I think it's very to be able to do that.
Yeah.
The other thing you have to think about is the death certificate. How do you get that? And they have to be able to be, the people who do the cremation or whatever have to be willing to give you the death certificate, but it won't happen unless you pay too. So there's a time factor in there.
Right. I mean, there is, I think, my recent recollection. So you can order, I think the general advice is to order, this is an area where it's really, really helpful to understand what your financial picture is because you're going to want to have a copy of the death certificate for each of those entities. And so that's going to be different for each person. I think it's most efficient if you can order the number of death certificates at the time of the death that you're going to need, but you can get them after the fact. I think it is faster. It's more efficient to order them all at that time. I'm not sure if there was more of the question. I'm not sure I captured it there, but whoever's is responsible for treating the body, the funeral home, they would take that initial request, and then additional copies would come from the state, I believe.
Okay, Cynthia Darlow
I see a hand there. Hi. Cynthia, will you unmute yourself? There we go.
Sorry, I tried to unmute you and then I muted you by accident. Go ahead and unmute yourself again, Cynthia.
Oh, we still have you on mute.
She's trying to unmute it. I can see her trying to unmute it on.
Yeah.
Try it one more time.
There we go. I got it.
Okay. Hi.
Sorry. I've just been through this. The funeral director will get you the death certificates. I recommend ordering at least 10, if not more.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you both for sharing that. I wanted to mention one other aspect that I had omitted at first from the digital life segment, which is hard drives and data would be especially valuable for if you or the person whose affairs you're arranging is an artist, creative professional, or for any photographer, for any other reason, has a large amount of digital material. Thinking about how you'll preserve those hard drives or laptops, as well as becoming aware of best practices for storage of digital data, the physical devices. There is actually data degradation over a long, long period on physical storage. So those can be something to consider, as well as, wishes of what someone would like to have done with their body of work, which would likely be one of the priorities that they've already communicated, but could be a question that you need to ask. That's all there.
All right, I'm checking through. I don't see any more hands, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and we'll give you a final thank you.